You good? Is good? Hello, Liz. Okay, let me call this meeting to order. Please rise as able for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. This meeting is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Law. This meeting of November 12, 2024 was included in the list of meeting notice sent to the Hunterdon County Democrat and Courier News on January 3rd, 2024, posted on the bulletin board at Borough Hall on that date, and has remained continuously posted as required. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the Borough Clerk. Can you do the roll call, please, Carl?
Yeah, Councilwoman Engelhardt here, Councilwoman Fasaro is absent, Councilman Levitt,
Here.
Council President Long,
Here.
Councilman Parker,
Here.
Council Vice President Rossetti.
Here.
Here. Who is Bill on?
He is.
Bill is online, okay, great. Okay, so we're gonna start with a presentation by our planner, our municipal and planning board planner, Beth McManus, to talk about the potential Main Street rezoning. The floor is all yours. I also see in the audience the chair of the planning board, Karen Giffen.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I just realized for some reason I didn't run the Zoom yet, which will enable me to share a screen. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that.
Oh, and I just want to also mention that Attorney Corsini called me. There's an accident on Super, so he's running a couple minutes late.
Recording in progress.
There we go.
You need to turn off your volume.
Yep, thank you. Got it. All right. There we go. So let me just share a screen for folks. My name, let me just fix that for the record.
Liz can still hear you, right?
Liz, can you hear me?
I'm good, thanks.
Great. Oh, I need, can you allow me to share?
Don't I have to promote you to co-host? Or you? I think I have to promote you to co-host.
That might be another way to do it, yeah.
Make co-host.
There you go.
That's what I.
Alright.
That's what I wrote down.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Okay, excellent. So folks, what I've got for this evening is a presentation to talk about some of the changes that are being contemplated in the downtown districts. But also, before I launch into that discussion, I also have information that I think is really just intended to provide some background information and some framework for the thinking about retail in a downtown such as Flemington. So with that, the overall message I think that folks should think about as we talk about zoning for the downtown is just simply, what's your vision for the borough? And I'm here this evening really to talk about downtown zoning, but I've listed a variety of things, some of which are more or less applicable to downtown, and I'm thinking most specifically about light industrial. But I want to encourage folks to think about the vision for not just Main Street, but also your other commercial districts, so that you can put Main Street and the surrounding streets within the context of the borough as a whole, as well as really, as well as the regional context, given that Flemington is sort of the hole in the donut of Raritan Township. So I would encourage folks to just to keep this in the back of your mind as you think about retail and zoning changes. And here we have a zoning map just to get everybody oriented. So when I'm talking about downtown zoning, what I'm really talking about is Main Street and the DB district to the extent that extends beyond Main Street. And I'm going to go through each of those districts in a little bit more detail, but just to get folks oriented, This right here, the main spine, the red spine, if you will, is Main Street, and that is within your DB, your downtown business district. We have the DB2 in these orange areas. This is Mine Street. This is Church Street down here, if you can see my cursor. Yeah. And then, in terms of your other commercial districts, this big, sort of lighter red area, this is your HR district, the highway retail district with down here, this is the shops of Flemington. And the black hatching is, an overlay district, your super shopping overlay district. Additionally, we have the purple areas. This is your TC district on the south side of Route 12, as well as along Park, and some other areas along the borough. And then the last area I really want to highlight is this pink area, and that is the VAS district with this road right here being Stangle Road, just to help folks get oriented. So as we talk about the downtown, it's predominantly Main Street, but it also, in terms of the DB2, provides connections to Stangle Road as well as what was Liberty Village via Church Street as well. A little bit more context. We've adopted a master plan as recently as 2022, but we also have the 2015 reexamination report, and both of those policy documents really lay the foundation for what we're talking about here, with a couple of goals that I wanted to highlight. The first one talking about a desire for specialty retail restaurants, encouraging redevelopment of underutilized properties, and another one speaking to the need for a vibrant downtown that will help drive retail and really quality of life and activities for residents as well as visitors to the borough. And for a little bit more specific, we have master plan policies that were set forth, and they were to eliminate the SIC codes. I'm going to go through those in a little bit detailed, but in general, if you take a look at the DB district as it exists today, there are dozens of permitted uses, and that is because every single use has a specific code, as opposed to, just to choose an example, as opposed to retail sales. Generally, it's listing things like dairy stores, candy stores, clothing stores, etc. And so that's why we have so many uses. In addition, other recommendations were to expand the permitted uses for your downtown districts, as well as the VAS district, the Stangle Road, Liberty Village area for the commercial aspects anyways, with the idea of to permit and encourage more entertainment destination uses. Also to eliminate, but not just eliminate, but revamp the PO district, and that was done through a revamping of the TC district. Many of those lands that were previously in the PO district are now in the TC district, and that was part of what the borough had done to, in part, reduce retail sales and service areas, so that would be, those uses would be better channeled to the downtown. But we also expanded permitted uses to allow for more larger permitted uses that are better suited for those locations, such as along Route 12 or larger lots along the park. And so much of this work has been done, but I wanted to give you a flavor of what type of recommendations were in the master plan, because that's part of what's leading up to today. And it's just a little bit of background. There are a couple ways to think about retail. So it includes, when we talk about retail, that it can be categorized as neighborhood goods and services, food and beverage, and also general merchandise. Each has its own sort of distinct role in a downtown, but they all play together, and when coupled together can really create a comprehensive or a wide variety of reasons for folks to come to Flemington. So an example I've used is if you want 15 different types of destinations to the borough, you need to have all of those uses located or permitted in a single area, so you've got those 15 different reasons to come to the borough. Another way to think about retail is convenience retail versus destination retail, with convenience being predominantly, but not only, but predominantly for servicing the needs of your residents, and destination retail predominantly, but not only, serving as a catalyst for bringing visitors and outside folks into the borough to do some shopping and have some fun here through entertainment. And so as we talk about, the reason why I wanted to bring some of this information to all of you is, there are a variety of reasons to plan for retail. So, one of them, I think huge for any municipality is quite simply just to bring ratables to support the residential tax base, to have something else to provide taxes, to provide school taxes rather than just residences. Along those lines, it's also about providing jobs for folks that can live in the borough and also have a reason to come to the borough in addition to just working. That means that they might also be able to take part in restaurants, other retail and other services in the borough. It's also about providing business support, so creating concentration so that these folks can thrive together and thrive off of each other through complementary services. And then lastly, it's about quality of life for residents. A lot of people come to Flemington because they want to be part of a downtown. They want to be able to walk to a restaurant. They want to be able to walk to a favorite store, or just walk to be able to pick up a bagel before they're on their way to work. For your retailers, something that I think we need to keep in mind are a handful of considerations that are within, I don't want to say the control of the borough, but are at least relevant to borough planning, as opposed to very large economic swings that might be happening and affecting the retail market. But they're thinking about retail, concentration of complementary businesses. If you think about places where there might be 6 different design stores in a single center, it's because they're thriving off of each other, they're complementing each other. And so not only just having that concentration, but also zoning to permit and to encourage that concentration of complementary uses. Those folks are also looking for visibility, and that has to do with building design as well as signage. They're looking at the population surrounding and traffic counts, and all of that is related to making sure that they've got the folks that are within convenient and easy distance to their shop so that they're more likely to generate economic activity and sales. And then, of course, they're looking for modern and flexible spaces. And that is predominantly a landlord to tenant issue or a property owner issue, but of course that relates to a lot of what the planning board does on a monthly basis through review and development applications. And one of the things that I think it has to be acknowledged is a major change in the economy, which is just simply that more and more retail is going to online. Just the example I've pulled is from 2000, there was 0.6% of total retail sales was for e-commerce. 24 years later, it's up to 16%. And that's, I think obviously going to continue to expand. And so that puts additional pressure on our downtowns and our strip retail centers to make sure that they can be viable and attractive, because there's a whole other element of competition compared to 30 years ago. And that of course is the internet, Amazon, as well as every other website out there. And so as we think about adjusting your zoning districts, we're thinking about right sizing zone districts. And I think a great example to that is our work with the TC district to try to concentrate retail more towards the center of downtown, as opposed to, say, Route 12 and some of these other outer areas where it doesn't currently exist. We also want to make sure that our zoning does the best it can to be resilient to economic changes, and part of that is about permitting a variety of uses that could be appropriate in a particular area while still advancing goals for the borough. It's also about improving the public realm. The borough has a great program for Main Street, for street trees, etc. And so that's also part of helping to make downtown more comfortable and inviting to folks. And same thing with traffic in some respect. I'm not talking about traffic counts, but just making sure that customers can easily get in. So that's about parking. It's about making sure deliveries and garbage can occur without being inconvenient. And then, of course, having convenient parking locations. A couple definitions, because I'm going to go through this as we talk about the permitted use. Retail sales is very simply sales direct to the consumer. So it's not about wholesale to what is going to be a middleman. It's you're walking into a store, you're buying something, you're bringing it home for use, as an example. Same thing for retail services. You're walking in, you're having a service conducted right then and there, as opposed to an example that I would share is a barber shop is a retail service. You're walking in, you're getting a haircut. But a real estate office is not. That is, you might have a realtor to speak to, but the service you're being provided is gonna occur presumably at least a few months from then when you actually purchase the home. So a realtor's office, while they're providing a service, a home sale, that is an office. Whereas a barber shop or a notary, for example, you're walking in and getting an immediate service, that is a retail service. Okay, so let's go through the zone districts. I'm gonna go through your existing districts real quick so that we can, just to get some context, and we're gonna get into what changes are currently being discussed. So for your downtown districts, the DB and the DB2, now I've coupled these two zones together because they actually permit all of the same uses today. And so those uses include 40 uses, like I said, because they're using the SIC codes, which define, for example, as I said, retail in 19 different ways, as opposed to a single use of retail. It also includes restaurants, breweries, retail services, repair services, upper story apartments, offices, farmers market, and commercial agriculture. So essentially, I think a lot of the uses that you would expect to find in downtown, as we're gonna see, not quite all of them, and perhaps a couple of additional uses that might be less appropriate for an active and a vibrant downtown that the borough would like to promote. For your Union Hotel redevelopment area it is surrounded by the DB district, and so unsurprisingly, has very similar permitted uses of upper story apartments, also of course, and I think obviously a hotel, retail sales, services, restaurants, offices, fitness, art studios, performing arts, and some education and training. So uses that are well aligned with what we're promoting elsewhere along Main Street. For your VAS district, this district has been revamped as part of earlier work done by this council as well as the planning board. And this permits a lot of the uses that you might expect for this this vibrant area of Stangl as well as Turntable Junction. So it's retail, sales, services, restaurants, recreation, also some education, art uses like manufacturing and studios, as well as a farmer's market, commercial agriculture, and theater uses. For your HR district, this is one of your non-residential districts that has not been revamped. And so that's why you see the 52 permitted uses, including 23 retail sales, as well as the restaurants, retail services, some contractor uses, repair services, office, fitness, senior citizens as well. The senior housing project on Church, at the corner of Church and Broad, is actually in the HR district, for example, and I think that's why that use exists. And so this is a really expansive zone district that has a very wide variety of permitted uses, I think consistent with the very large and diverse area that the zone district covers. Your TC district, of course, we already revamped that to move away from retail. And so this is a place where offices, medical, professional offices are permitted, as well as childcare, and then other destination uses like recreation, theaters, higher education. And then we've got some other uses that are appropriate for areas that are not quite in the downtown, like club facilities, animal hospital, funeral home, research, and health and fitness facilities. However, this district does have conditional uses and where you can meet those conditions, which are largely tied to, for retail and apartments, it's about larger sites that might include consolidation of properties. That's an opportunity for folks to do retail, to do some limited housing. And then we also permit some other uses such as contractor, light industrial, and repair facilities. However, those are tied to indoor activities, so as to prohibit outdoor storage, which can be rather unsightly, particularly given some of the locations here, and also limiting hours. So while these last three uses on the list are permitted, the conditions are really tied to limiting the impact to any surrounding residences or surrounding uses in general. For our CB district, this is another district that has not yet been revamped. As you can see, this is generally surrounding the Route 12 circle and the entrance into town through Main as well as Brown Street. It permits a variety of retail, office, and repair services, as well as 1 and 2 family homes, for which there are several in the district. So, as we think about moving forward, what I'm thinking, for your downtown, I'm thinking about a lot of the work that we've already done in the TC, the VAS, and through the elimination of the PO district. We've got Main Street construction, that's clearly, once that redevelopment project is completed, that's gonna have a big, presumably very positive impact on downtown. We also have a variety of existing and service uses. We have new residents and improved development and some redevelopment sites that may move forward in the future. And then, of course, we have Raritan Township development. So as I started out this presentation, asking folks to think about what is your vision and what is it that you foresee for Flemington, that you'd like to foresee in Flemington. I put this list together because I think these are some additional influences that we can't help but recognize are going to play a role in how folks use the downtown, how many folks use the downtown, and what might be appropriate in the years to come. So let's talk about some ordinance changes. And right now, what we're looking at are, I would say, two large categories and one item that is rather small that I'm gonna hit upon at the end. The two large categories are changes to the DB and the DB2 districts. And then the smaller one, as you can see, is listed for the HR district. And the process that we've gone through thus far, so in addition to the master plan goals, I want to be clear that there have been policies set forth beginning in the 2015 planning board, and then followed through, or excuse me, 2015 reexamination report adopted by the planning board, and then followed through in the 2022 master plan. There are policies recommending elimination of the SIC codes, expanding and modernizing permitted uses, and also eliminating inactive uses from the downtown. And I would define an active use as one that essentially, from a very simplistic standpoint, has a lot of people walking through the door for activity, for economic activity. So thinking about folks walking in and out of the door for a restaurant, to get a meal, to get coffee, to buy something, to have a service taken care of. Those are active uses. Those are reasons why folks come to the downtown. And importantly, they also address that concept of having a concentration of complementary uses. The borough seeks to be, if part of your vision is being a destination for the region, for folks that come and shop and dine and just enjoy the borough, what you really need is multiple reasons for them to come. You need a concentration of retail and restaurants so that folks can come and walk the several blocks, stop in all the shops, grab the coffee, grab the meal that they're looking for, and give them more reasons to come to the borough. And that's exactly why concentration is really the best way to sort of generate that activity, to be a catalyst for really expanding the area. So if you've got a concentration in one area, using that as a catalyst to have that additional activity, interest, and complementary uses to be expanded from there. So as we take a look at the master plan, we see these recommendations for the use changes that I just described. And the process thus far has been working with a subcommittee of the planning board, so several members, to review the permitted uses, to draft potential ordinance amendments, and that it's been sort of an iterative process where the draft is done by my office, discussed with the subcommittee, with amendments made and so on and so forth until introduction seems appropriate. But in addition to simply working with the planning board subcommittee, we've also discussed the potential changes as well as concerns with the FCP, specifically the FCP executive director, as well as the president of the board. And then we've also, as recently as today, actually discussed with the zoning officer, because it's one thing for all of you to put together what you think, put together your vision to adopt an ordinance and in hopes of having that implemented. But we want to ensure that the zoning officer feels that he has the tools to interpret the ordinance in a way that is consistent with council's vision. It's not appropriate for us to provide guidance as to how the ordinance should be interpreted. Instead, it is appropriate for us to give him the tools to do his job as well as possible. And so that's part of the reason why the conversation with the zoning officer, I think, was so important to find out what challenges or what pitfalls he might see with ordinance definitions or permitted uses, et cetera. Because we want him to be comfortable in his interpretations. And very much to his credit, he had a couple of ideas which I think are I would say clarifications and not a significant change to any of your definitions, but you may see that in a future ordinance amendment.
And that they went to the whole planning board.
Absolutely, yes, and yeah, thank you. And so, yes, working with planning board subcommittee, but more specifically, actually went to the planning board for review. And they had some ideas, the ways that ordinances will be tweaked in ways that are reflected in the presentation tonight. Once this process of updating the ordinances are complete, it can be introduced to council. So in terms of your DB district, the proposed uses include retail, sales and services, restaurants and breweries, art studios, indoor recreation, theaters, existing funeral homes. And I want to emphasize that because you have an existing funeral home, the purpose is to just simply allow them to operate as a permitted use rather than to expand to allow for additional funeral homes. And the same thing for single family homes. You have a number of existing single family homes, oftentimes in really beautiful historic buildings. And so we want to allow those single family residences to remain without the implication being if they want to expand the home and it's not a permitted use, they actually need to request a use variance and get a D variance from your planning board, which is difficult for single family homes. And so we're allowing those to remain as permitted uses provided they are existing today. And then lastly, to update accessory uses to allow for events and classes to be accessory to permitted uses. So it's not necessarily a new building type that would be permitted, but really it's clarification to your accessory uses to make sure that for folks that might own, let's say, a shop, to ensure that they can have maybe an evening class to bring in customers or a customer club event without running afoul of the zoning ordinance. So this is about giving the zoning officer as well as your business owners the tools and the clarity to understand what's intended to be permitted in the district. For your DB district, in addition to those that I just listed, there are a handful of uses that are also proposed that would be permitted on uses not including the first floor. So essentially upper stories most likely, but to the extent that buildings have basements, they would also be permitted there. And those would include artisan manufacturing, health and fitness uses, higher education and learning centers, apartments, as well as offices. In addition, we have a few conditional uses that are also being recommended. So those first floor uses, first floor excluded uses that are listed at the top of this slide would be permitted on the first floor if the condition would be if they do not face Main Street, essentially. So to the extent that you have a building that's located on a corner, for example, if there's a tenant space that's oriented and accessed from the side street as opposed to Main Street, that would be a permitted use. Okay, so the intent is primarily to allow these more active uses listed here, like retail, sales, restaurants, art studios, etc. Those are the uses intended to line Main Street within the DB district. To the extent that some of these upper story only uses are on side streets, they also would be permitted. The other conditional use would be new single family homes, essentially on the outer boundaries of the DB district, north of Kaffner Street and south of William Street. And so the primary differences between this proposed DB district now and the existing DB district, I would say there are couple things that I really want to highlight. First is just the elimination of the SIC codes. I think it's a massive simplification of your zoning code. And even though the use list literally goes from, maybe 40 uses down to 10 uses, something along those lines. I think that it should not be characterized as there are less uses now being permitted. It's really a reorganization of the permitted uses. And so, as I said, instead of allowing just 19 retail services, or I'm sorry, I forget the number for the DB district specifically, instead of allowing just those 19 retail services, it would be, or retail sales, it would be all retail sales, essentially. And so I just want to be really clear, just because we're going from 40 to 10 uses or a smaller number of uses does not actually mean that the district has gotten much more restrictive because of that reorganization. The other thing that I think needs to be highlighted is that we're concentrating on active uses. And I think the most notable use that is not active is an office use. And that's why you see that now being restricted to upper stories, or as a conditional use permitted on the first floor if it does not face Main Street. And so that's an overview of what's being considered for the DB district. Next, for your DB2 district, and of course, these are the orange areas highlighted there on Church and Mine only. So we're permitting retail sales and services excluding restaurants and breweries. And I'm going to come back to that in a little bit, but for right now, excluding restaurants and breweries. We're also permitting art studios, offices, existing single-family homes. And then for uses excluding the first floor, health and fitness, higher education and learning centers, apartments. And again, we want to permit events and classes that are accessory to those permitted uses, as I described for the DB1 or just the DB district. I'm sorry, before I move on to that. The other item I want to highlight is we're also going to be proposing conditional uses for the DB2 district. And so where you see excluding restaurants and breweries, those uses would be conditionally permitted where they're not located adjacent to a single family home. And the reason why that has been done for this particular district is this district has a variety of homes that are adjacent to single-family residences, but in addition to that, the district has a bit of a different character. It's more residential in nature, more low density in nature, just by virtue of, for example, homes being set back farther from the street with a lawn as opposed to being right along the sidewalk. And it's also intended as more of a transitional district rather than the primary retail and active district that we have, such as for your DB district and also the BAS district along Stangle as well. And so we've created this conditional use for restaurants and breweries to be in order to limit the impact on single family residences. And that's why the conditional use is simply that they can't be located adjacent to those uses. It's really intended to make the single family neighborhoods a bit more comfortable that surround this district. And then for the last change that I wanted to share is very simple for your HR district, and that is simply to add breweries as a permitted use. This is not a proposed revamping of the HR district. That may occur later. This is really sort of a quick fix. We know that breweries are appropriate in this district, given the permitted uses of restaurants, et cetera. And so simply adding that use will, I think, just simply complement the district and allow for something that I think folks might assume already is permitted in that district to actually be permitted. And then while we're at it, I also want to add that language about classes and events being accessory to permitted uses in the district. And so as we think about the time frame of implementing your vision, which may include what we just discussed with the proposed ordinances, there are a couple things that I want to highlight. So for those uses that exist but may not be permitted by virtue of the ordinance, those uses are allowed to remain. No change to permitted uses gives the municipality the ability to tell a use that they must leave the district, provided they're there occupying space legally. They're essentially grandfathered in, that just because the use has been prohibited does not mean you need to leave your home. If you're in a single family home, does not mean that you need to really relocate your business. You're allowed to remain for as long as you like. Additionally, your use can turn over to a new tenant or a new property owner, provided the use remains the same. So an example would be an existing office in the DB district, let's say it's occupied by an attorney. If this ordinance is adopted that prohibits first floor office spaces, that attorney's office may remain. The attorney's office may be sold to a new property owner and it may be reoccupied with an attorney. And that may continue for the next 2 years, 10 years, or 30 years. However, if that attorney's office gets converted into, let's say, a salon, and it operates as a salon for a handful of years, and then an attorney would like to purchase the building and turn it back into an attorney's office, at that point, it would be prohibited because it already turned over to a new use. You can't go back in time to what had previously been permitted. But the big message here is existing uses may remain in place and they may be reoccupied by the same use. Additionally, in order for all of buildings that might not be occupied with a permitted use today to do so in the future, I do want to highlight and acknowledge that there may be building improvements necessary. It might be creating an improved retail front so that there's display space. It could be a need for parking, it could be a need for improved signage, but building improvements may be necessary. And the last thing I want to highlight is there might be a bit of a time period in order to generate some momentum as we get that concentration of uses, as we get a concentration of a few more restaurants. There might be another restaurateur that's interested in coming. As you get a couple more home decor shops, home decor shops come into town, you may need that before another 2 or 3 decide that they want to come to Flemington to be part of this larger collection of home decor, thinking that the borough may be a destination for that type of shopping. And so overall, these things take time, but it's important. But that's why I start the presentation with, what is your vision? Because I think you've got to have vision. And then unfortunately, the way it works is there needs to be some patience in order to allow for these things to happen, for the existing uses decide to leave because they have the choice, they can remain, for the building improvements to occur, for that concentration to occur, so that you can start to get that momentum up. And so with that, that is an overview, but I'm happy to take any questions.
You said this, when was this put in the master plan originally?
It started in 2015, where there was a re-examination report where inactive uses were recommended to be prohibited from the downtown, and that was followed through in 2022 with similar recommendations.
So in 2022, it was reaffirmed and
Yes.
additional language went in there.
Yes,
Just a question, banks are, what are banks? They're services, right? Are they services?
yes, the actual banking service is a service. If it's a lender, like a mortgage broker, that would be an.
No, but like
that's-
Northfield Bank, which is on Main Street,
Mhm.
would be a permitted use.
Yes, that's service.
Okay, all right, so I'm gonna open up for questions, Council President, do you have any?
Yeah, a couple. So the SIC code, the getting rid of those has been part of this since for a while, the master plan.
Absolutely. I believe that
And-
was also recommended in 2015.
Okay,
Earlier.
and just so we're, because this is really important, you know, the amount of uses with SIC codes exists, like 40.
Mhm.
But that's more restricted than change, because our guy in the zoning office has to interpret those codes and has to stick to the letter, right?
Absolutely. So.
Wait, hold on. Liz, can you hear her? Can you hear?
Yeah, all good. I can hear her.
No, I see that you're muted. That's why it confused me.
If I think the mic, it's still picking her up, so no problem.
So an example that I like to give, just to try to put it in context, is right now your DB district, for example, permits things like paint, glass, wallpaper sales and service, hardware store, lawn and garden center, general merchandise store, grocery store, dairy product sales. But
These are all different SAC codes.
these are all different SIC codes, but what you can't sell is a computer. Because I'm not sure anybody anticipated having a computer store when this ordinance was written. So now I recognize, I'm not sure that, you know, Joe Schmo wants to open up a computer sales store, the Dell store on Main Street. But I think it's a good example to just show how outdated the SIC codes are, compared to the uses and the things that we're talking about today.
Cause and it's interesting you say that, cause I have this, and other council members have expressed concern about that, here we absolutely have storefronts that are not filled. And that might be a reason. So as far as you had mentioned, having a vision here, what do we want? I think what everybody wants, in general, I think the word fun comes to mind. And as long as these changes open up that potential, I think that's exactly what we've been waiting for around here. I also had a question about, like, in the meantime, because you did mention, there may be some momentum, but we gotta be patient.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you mentioned one of the stipulations about the offices was that they go on the second floor, and listed in there was, I'm pretty sure it's all medical.
Mhm.
So if I want to open up a physical therapy office, should I be putting it on the second floor? This is just a very specific example.
Yeah.
Because my curiosity is there fluidity built within any of this to allow for, in the meantime, if we're not getting an influx of fun, restaurants, breweries, et cetera, we might have somebody who wants an office, or one of these ideas up there that was like more of a hybrid type of business. Is there anything built in to allow for that kind of fluidity, or no?
So I don't think that type of fluidity really exists with the municipal land use law, and that's for better or worse, the world in which we need to operate. So there's really no such thing as a temporary variance or a temporary use that might be permitted. It's either permitted or it's not. And so a physical therapy office, that's a doctor's office or medical office in terms of your definition. If this ordinance were adopted, yes, that would have to be on the upper story or perhaps a basement or perhaps on a side street on the first floor within the DB district. But there's no way for me to say yes for the next 3 years. That's just simply not an option here in New Jersey.
Beth, we did, so Deets Building has an elevator on Main Street, it has several floors above. So that would work.
Mhm.
The Victorian Plaza also has an elevator, it has a second floor and a first floor.
Mhm.
I'm just throwing these out, and the Denite Building as well, on Side Street. But, the ordinance will allow, right, correct me if I'm wrong, the back of any building on Main Street on the first floor. So if you take Printex Building, which is currently available for rent,
Mhm.
they could put a physical therapist in the back half of that first floor, couldn't they? Because it's got a back entrance.
Yeah, so as long as it does not face Main Street. As long as it does not face Main Street, it would be permitted
So
essentially.
they could put an office back there, they could put any of these medical uses back there as well.
Yes.
So the front would have to be retail service,
Mhm.
but the back could fit what the council president just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question that kind of ties into that.
Mhm.
Okay. I think the interpretation of active use is very difficult,
Sure.
because an active use could easily, I mean, I've been to the physical therapist, over time, I'm very klutzy, I've hurt my ankle a few times. And it's a very active place with appointment after appointment after appointment. So for me, an active use is people going in and out a lot, right? No matter what they're doing. And having visibility on a main street is important for any business. So I guess my concern is the interpretation of what an active business is. And with the removal of the SIC codes, which is something that, we've dreamed about for at least almost a decade and a half. And has been something that many municipalities have tried to phase out, and we are slowly but surely. We did it a couple of years ago with some of the other zones. So this is the next step. That's great. But I'm just concerned about just like the SIC codes were too controlling and too limiting in some respects, because it was very much. I'm using this as an example, this isn't, you have an engineer is listed as an SIC, but an architect isn't, so, you know, but they're, one would argue there were similar uses, right? That's not what our SIC codes say, but I'm just using it as an example. So I guess we're almost limiting ourselves in another way with this. Relying on the word active, I think.
So I just wanna be clear, so I'm using the word active. I'm not using the word in an ordinance that I'm preparing for the
So
borough.
who is interpreting that? The code official? The
The word-
zoning code official?
Well, the word active is not found in a zoning ordinance.
Right.
For Flemington, and I wouldn't recommend it precisely for that reason, because I think it is something that's hard to define.
Mhm.
But I think thinking about what you want in your downtown is appropriate in terms of activity and active uses, because I think my understanding is the vision is folks want a vibrant downtown that a lot of people are going to for shopping, services, dining, etc. So, but I agree, it's hard to define, but I encourage folks to think of the use, because I think that's there's really two components that I think folks want to promote in the downtown, and that is active uses, so you want that foot traffic going in and out of stores or buildings rather. And then the other one is this concentration of complementary uses so that the borough can serve as a destination for these complementary uses. So it's a destination for uses for sales and services, in part for your residents, and that's why I went through the different types of retail, but it's also a concentration of sales and services for visitors to the borough.
I guess my concern is that let's continue with the conversation on complementary uses. Because if someone's going to the physical therapist and then they're done and they go grab their cup of coffee next door. So I do think there's when sitting on the planning board for years, we relied on, I always thought that variances were the way that if it didn't quite match up, you went for a variance, and if it didn't match up from a size standpoint or from a use standpoint or whatever the situation was. Because you had reasonable people kind of looking at it and going, yeah, this makes sense, or this doesn't make sense. I think we might be boxing ourselves into a corner a little bit. But I think that your question of does the ordinance allow for that flexibility? That's what variances are for again. So you're going back to the same system that you always had, which is, if it doesn't fit, people can ask for a variance. That was the case then, and it's the case,
It's the case
now,
for
it'll be the
municipalities.
case in the future.
But that was part of the reason that we had the conversation with Pat Rinaldi, our zoning officer, was also to make sure that his interpretation fit the vision. That he was seeing what we saw, and we meaning not only the subcommittee, but the entire planning board, which unanimously said, move this forward, keep moving this forward, it's right on target. So, I'm gonna get back to the council president. Did you have any other questions?
I did.
Go ahead.
So, you have obviously an abundance of expertise. I played SimCity once. So what are you seeing, trend wise? I would assume it would be consistent with all that we outlined here, but we all sit up here and we have to when we talk about this, our main thing we always do is compare, where have I been? What have I seen? And I always go to the obvious Somerville or Red Bank or stuff like that, things are common. Are you seeing this is how things are moving, this is what's been happening in the market? I mean.
And so I would say smaller downtowns, and I would say, including places that are larger than Flemington, like Somerville, but not Philadelphia or a major city, but smaller downtowns. The term that I keep hearing over and over and over again is experiential retail, or maybe destination.
Hmm.
Because the old downtown districts that thrived in decades past are really just outdated at this point, and they don't fit today's economic model. Because when you need, I don't know, when you need a pair of socks or you need a pair of quick shoes, a lot of people are just typing on the computer and going to, the Amazon of their choice, essentially, to order it. Most people are not walking downtown. The retailers know that. And so the old shoe shops are, and there are exceptions out there, but the standard shoe shop, they don't exist in downtown anymore. It's maybe a high-end shoe store and a high-end shopping district, but that is not what we're talking about. And so what you need to do is create an experience for folks that are going to an area. You've got to be sort of extra inviting, because just simply having the shoes for sale is not enough anymore. You need to create an experience where it's convenient and fun, I think was your word. So it's got to be convenient in the sense they've got to be able to get in, they've got to be able to park someplace convenient, and then not just go to their destination. Oftentimes that's not enough to be a draw. You want them to be able to say, you know what, I want to buy that gift for my friend whose birthday is coming up, and while I'm there, I want to stop at this store. I want to pick up this couple of dog treats and a harness for my dog at the dog store. I want to pick up, an antique at the home place. I'm going to pick up the gift for my friend, and then I'm going to meet my my other friends, and we're going to go to dinner in downtown. And that is an experience for folks, and that's really what is necessary to be a thriving retail district. And I think it also dovetails with one of the requests that I had referenced in this presentation that came from the FCP, and that is about making sure that the events and the classes that a lot of retailers are using to drive customer loyalty and activity, outside just simply buying the thing that they sell, they find that that's necessary in order for their individual retailers to create an experience and to be a destination for their customers. And so you can see it being requested on the small scale with that small example of an accessory use. And what I'm recommending for the borough is really that same concept on a larger scale, about trying to do that for, in this example, all of Main Street, trying to create an experience and a destination for your residents. Definitely, we want folks that live here to be able to come to downtown and hit several activities that are interesting to them, but also to bring folks to the borough from outside that want to come here for an experience and for an afternoon or evening.
We're not creating Disneyland.
No,
We're the county seat. We
yeah,
have business to
course.
attend to. I
Of
mean,
course.
I moved here because I could walk to the bank and
Mhm.
to the post office and to get my passport renewed and, so there's people coming into town doing serious business with the court and, whatever else needs to be done.
But I can promote.
I don't know if the market can support this to an extreme.
What did you envision when you voted for this in 2015 and 2022?
But what's in the master plan and how it's being interpreted are two different things. I'm not saying this isn't a good idea. I just think that it needs to be carefully implemented, and we haven't really got to that part.
Can I ask you something? So for these, right, let's say examples of towns and what you described, the experiential retail and stuff like that. I'm guessing we're looking at places like kind of like Lambertville, Clinton, Somerville, Frenchtown. They obviously allow these kinds of spaces to exist, but in any of these towns, do they get there by eliminating these other uses as well?
I don't think I know. I'm really familiar with Lambertville, having grown up in that area, and I don't recall a lot of offices ever being located along Bridge and Union Street. I can't tell you that they weren't permitted, but I can tell you that that there was never a large concentration of them.
I can say with certainty for Lambertville, Clinton, Somerville, they have not illuminated offices at all. I didn't look at Frenchtown yet, but they still have that as a permitted use in what we consider the main destination spot.
Mhm.
It's just that they've been overtaken through other methods. not by eliminating them entirely.
So I think it's a slippery slope, right? I mean, I think that's the whole, I think that's where I'm hearing, it's a slippery slope. People come to go to a doctor or go to a financial planner or go to whatever the case may be. And then they tend to go shopping, or they tend to go to a store, or they tend to go to get a bite to eat, whether it's a bagel or going for lunch or whatever it is. I can say this with all certainty. I've traveled the United States, big time, for work, right? And I've gone to very small towns such as Flemington, and I've gone to bigger towns such as a Lambertville, and a little bit bigger towns such as a Princeton, and a little bit bigger town. So I mean, I've seen the variance, and I get where you're going. I really get where you're going. I think what the slippery slope is that if you put a business in the back of a building, does that necessarily help that? Is that necessarily something that somebody's gonna go for, right? Because I'm just thinking of a doctor's office. Is that something they're gonna go for because they wanna be highly visible, or a financial planner, or whatever the case may be? And I'm not saying that this is wrong. I'm just saying that I understand the slippery slope of it all, right? So I do like the idea that it's expanding, because I think that's a really good idea, and I saw some of what was going on, and I think it's an excellent idea. I think I'm clearing some issues, is that I guess there's two things. So we can designate all of this as retail in the front. My question, my caution is, and that's not even a question, it's a caution, it doesn't mean it's not gonna happen. Is that what is the, like, how many of those people actually want to come in? What is the inventory for people wanting to come in, first of all, right? Because then that kind of dictates what you're gonna do as well, right? And if they don't come in, then we have these storefronts that are empty. The backs may be full, but the fronts are empty, and so we're back at the same place. I just understand the slippery slope. I'm not, by no means am I pushing back on this at all. I actually think it's a really good idea. I'm just bringing cautiousness of this, and I think that's the point. And I don't think it's a really good idea to compare, and I heard this the other night, and I agree with this, and I started going back and thinking about some of my travels. We're smaller than a Somerville, we're smaller than a Princeton, we're smaller than, I mean, we're probably the size of like a Frenchtown, maybe, I don't know. And so we only have so much square foot to deal with. But the other thing is that when you look at, there's retail and then there's restaurants. The issue is the restaurants, because we don't really have the capacity to flip buildings for restaurants unless someone's gonna spend a lot of money to do it, right? I mean, that's just the reality.
Yeah.
I mean, you just gotta be real with this. But we do have things that we can put in that targets. I mean, what I see is there's potential to target things for younger people to come in, right? Because that's who it's going to spend. Because here's the reality, right? This is a reality. This is when I was in advertising. I remember this, and it's still true today. The highest expendable income comes not from you and I, our ages. It comes from the kids. It comes from 9, 10, 12, 15, 16, 18-year-olds. They have a lot of money. They really do, and they spend a lot of money. And so if we can target something like that to bring younger people in, to encourage them to walk up and down Main Street and have fun in a little bit, then I think you're onto something. I know I'm kind of going around, but again, I think it's a really good idea. I don't see anything wrong with this. I just see some cautionary tales in this. That's all.
I want to tell them, what our zoning officer told us tonight about the old T-Berry's house. That he's been getting, continues to get calls asking if a permitted use of the old T-Berry's house is a restaurant, and he continues to tell them, yes, it is. And then they all find out that it now needs, the whole building needs to be sprinklered under DCA code. And everybody freaks and yells at him like, but you said it was permitted use. And he's like, it is a permitted use. But
There's a big difference,
right?
permitted use
Yeah.
and the code, the
But,
building code
you
are
know,
two different
Your
things.
point, but yeah, I mean, there's a ton of interest in putting restaurants in Flemington, but DCA makes it expensive, as does just general construction for a restaurant, but.
Again, I just want to reiterate, I think this is a good idea. I'm not pushing back on it at all. I just want to put that on.
I'm gonna circle,
I do think there really is some, like. I do hear what Susan and Trent are saying. That's in my mind right now, because I hear that there's some validity to both what you're saying. I just, I'm just raising that.
so I'm gonna circle back to the council president. Do you have any other questions?
Good. Thank you.
You are, okay. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I just
Okay,
wanted, just a
sorry.
little food for thought, no pun intended with the restaurants. But,
Yeah, right.
but more related to the office concern, and I hear the concern, but a couple things. Yes, while the proposal does state that offices are not permitted on the first floor, and that is a significant change. I do want to highlight that there's a lot of space within the borough where office space is permitted, in addition to the upper stories. It's the TC district, for example, it's the HR district. And so in terms of there being available inventory of land or buildings for office space, I think the borough still has plenty of opportunities for both occupancy of existing buildings as well as construction of new office space. However, the other thing that I do want to recognize is the fact that the office market is going very poorly
Yeah.
in Hunterdon County.
Big
Now,
time.
we are the county seat, and so you guys do still have
Everywhere.
offices in downtown, but that's sort of unique, quite honestly, because office as a whole is struggling, and if you look at Hunterdon County as well, it's no different, let me put it that way. And so while I recognize the concern for your office tenants and potential future office tenants, I do want to highlight just the fact that office space right now is not a moving industry, if you
That's a
will.
good point. That's,
Um,
that's a really valid point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And to the extent, and then Susan, you talked about like some particularly active office uses. And yeah, they're out there, I admit that, but it's not every use, it's not attorney's office, it's not planner's office, that's for sure. And, it's not a lot of other different offices, and we do have this variance process. So if you are an office use, whether it's physical therapy, and I don't wanna pick specific uses, but you have an office use that you think is a bit different, active, would be more of a complement to the downtown. I would say that is exactly why we have the variance process, because it is impossible to plan for every potential outcome, and frankly, I don't think it should be a goal. We should do our best to plan for likely outcomes, but the idea that we can accommodate every potential that might be a good idea it just doesn't. It's not possible,
No, that's
so
right.
I don't think it should be a goal of ours. So, and then the last thing. The bottom line is change takes time and it takes patience. And so I come back to, again, as you struggle, is this a good idea? Is this what we want for the downtown? I would emphasize, what do you want for downtown in 10 years from now? What do you want it to look like in 15 years from now? Because that's the question that needs to be answered. And that's what should be dictating changes that you consider this year.
That's such a valid point, Beth.
Because it's not about what you want next year to look like.
No, that, you're absolutely correct. Actually, it's more like 20 years from now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even
It will
10 or
take
15,
10,
it's really 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Well, because change is so slow.
Yes.
And we don't know what the economy is going to do, and we don't know how things are gonna flip, because just think about it. People are doing online ordering, that may flip again, because now we're starting to see people going back into like malls.
Mhm.
So it's getting ready to flip again, so you just never know, that's why I'm saying it just flips, so. I always say you have to plan for 20 years.
I think that's
Councilman Levitt, do you have any questions?
I do, I'm just highly skeptical of this, I'm curious to see where this has worked, like. I don't think just by, I'm curious to see how many of if we adopted it, with the proposed uses we have. What amount or percent of buildings that we have, or offices that we have right now, just wouldn't be valid uses anymore. And what number that is. A lot of buildings on Main Street aren't particularly well suited to retail on the first floor as it stands and would require. I'm assuming major renovations to make it possible. to have a retail use like we wanna see. It's not that I don't want to see retail in the downtown. I just don't think that we can like induce demand for retail, if it's not there through, you know, wishful zoning. I just don't think it'll be it's an effective strategy. I mean, like you said, offices are on the decline. Well, good, maybe we won't have to do anything and they'll just naturally die off and be replaced with retail, I suppose, in 10 to 20 years, if that's how the trend is going. I just wanna say, like, you know, not permitting them at all, I don't think is gonna be a good or healthy way to get there. The other thing I was curious about, not related to downtown business district at all though, was, you mentioned breweries being a permitted use in the highway retail zone. I like to think of myself as an anti-drunk driving kind of guy. And the idea of the word highway retail and brewery, it just doesn't, it seems strange to me. If it was on the side of the borough, I understand that, yes, the majority of people who are gonna go to and from anywhere in town is probably gonna be through a car anyway, it's gonna be people coming in from Raritan Township. It's just that, you know, I know that 100% of them are going to go there that way if they're on one side of the highway, whereas, okay, maybe only like 80 to, you know, 70 to 80% of them will be that way on the other side of the highway. But that's pretty much it. I don't know, a brewery overlay for half of the, you know, highway retail zone.
But we're Chimney Rock, which is a sports bar.
It is, technically, and I know people have done it. You can cut through the baseball field. It's a kiddo.
There's a fire right there.
That's what I'm saying though. I understand we do have existing places on the highway. I'm not trying to promote more of them essentially. That's all.
I just want to make one, other than a couple of Victorian houses on Main Street.
Yeah.
And the Chamber of Commerce, which was a law office.
Sure.
Everything else up until 2000 and
That's a good proportion,
four
yeah.
was retail. They were, all those little tiny buildings were all retail stores.
Sure,
So they are suitable for retail.
well, then it's possible that they'll go back to being that, but the market has not sustained it.
That's just to your point, that you said they're not suitable for retail. They were all retail.
Well, but we permitted offices back then, right? There were offices permitted on Main Street back then. And things changed, you know, it's not gonna, this isn't just gonna like magically create the demand for retail where there isn't any. I think it should be flexible. Would I prefer to see a retail shop in any of these places on Main Street? Absolutely, I would. But I also don't wanna see a vacant storefront because, you know, somebody that wants to open a law office would have to go through a, you know, $10,000 fee variance to do so.
Or they listen to that and they go, where it's already a permitted use and we have plenty of empty office space now. Including the most beautiful Victorian home in Wilmington Borough, Roselawn, which sits there empty and dying, which is zoned office. As well as other uses, so you put them where you want them, and do you have any other questions?
What's the purpose of keeping BB1 and BB2 separate?
I think the purpose is they really have two different characters, so DB1 is just Main Street, predominantly Main Street, plus, you know, little side street, activity, side street areas as well. And most of the DB1 is characterized with buildings located pretty much at the sidewalk or really close. And so I think that's differentiated from the DB2 district, where the character for those districts are mostly buildings set
Definitely
back.
a different feel to it.
Yeah, so
Sure.
they have lawns, there are more residences in the, I don't know about a number, but in proportion to the total properties, more residences in the DB2 district. And overall, I would say it has a lower intensity feel compared to Main Street.
Councilman Engelhardt, you have any questions?
Yeah. I try and actually answer, asked a couple of my questions. I wanted to get some clarification on the higher education elements. You know, one of the items the master plan has is finding a location for higher education in general, being that we're the only county seat in New Jersey that does not have a higher education, you know, in the county seat in some way, shape, or form. Are you saying that there's no higher education permitted anywhere in the DB district?
Today,
No, in the proposal that you're,
the proposal,
take some pictures of the, and can we get a copy of this proposal, I guess, when?
so, for higher education learning centers, those are both proposed to be permitted in the DB district, excluding the first floor. Higher education is basically post-high school learning center is for children, essentially. And so those would be permitted uses on upper stories or the basement essentially, or essentially not facing Main Street. As a conditional use.
So what would be an example of?
Sorry.
What would be an example of the higher education coming into the second floor, third floor?
So
Just out
it,
of curiosity.
it might be, in my town, for example, we have, who is it? It's Paul Mitchell, it doesn't matter, but it's a school for folks learning, salon trade, like hair,
Oh.
makeup, hair color,
A
things like
trade.
that. And they are actually on the, in this different example, but it is on the upper story of a strip mall in my town.
Mhm.
You might also have a school for, I think they'll do schools for like paralegals or maybe,
Okay.
some nursing.
Understood, okay, I just wanted to figure out what.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
I don't necessarily know if it's a bad thing to have a one entire building dedicated to a higher education campus.
Mhm.
So these are very minute details. The HR comment about adding a brewery, there's no breweries permitted right now. Does that include distilleries as well, or are they one and the same? When you
Yeah.
say brewery, you mean brewery and distillery?
Correct.
Okay. For some reason, the TC zone still looks choppy to me around town. I was wondering if there was if the committee at all took a look at.
You mean the boundaries of it?
Yeah, and I was wondering if the committee at all took into consideration perhaps encapsulating some of the closer ones to the DB or the DB2. I don't know if there's even any opportunity there. It just caught my eye from the graphic.
You know, this current round of ordinance review hasn't had that discussion.
Okay.
Generally, what happened before was the TC district encompassed, was revamped in terms of permitted uses, and then it was revised to generally encompass the PO district, your professional office district
Right.
that existed.
How would something like years ago, there was an interior design store on Main Street.
Mhm.
I bought all of my kitchen light
Mhm.
from there, if you recall. She also did interior design services. And actually there was another interior designer on Main Street not too long ago that recently left. How is that interpreted by this new proposed ordinance?
So if if it's a service where you're going in to say select fabrics, consult with the designer, purchase perhaps furniture that they sell, that type
Like the
of,
building materials, I guess,
what's that?
buildings and.
Yeah, so
Building materials, home improvement.
Yeah, I've been to design stores where they have fabric samples for maybe curtains and furniture, and they might be selling some home decor items as well, they've got some tables and lamps and whatnot for sale, and then you might also consult a designer while you're there. That would be a mix of retail sales and services. If you are an interior design consultant that is, the distinction I'm trying to make is you're an interior designer that might do, for example, a lot of commercial work. I've worked with interior designers who partner with architecture companies, for example, to do tenant fit outs of office buildings. That isn't office use. So
See, that's
really
the,
up
that's
to
the nuance
services.
that I think we're struggling with.
Sure.
And I know the mayor mentioned, well, why did I vote for the last two master plans? But the master plan is aspirational, so, you're looking at a big picture, this is a good idea, hey, council, hey, committee, let's dive into this deeper. So, I'm not saying that there isn't bad ideas here, but this is a very progressive and kind of radical idea to have this, the entire length of Main Street, and I don't even know if there's any municipalities in New Jersey that have the entire length, especially ours. I mean, we have a long length of Main Street, we've talked about in the planning board having quarter mile walking areas. I'm not necessarily against the idea. It is aspirational and it's a good goal, but putting it into practice, I think, is challenging, especially with our existing inventory. I think we have to be very careful about how we implement this, if we implement this, because it will be a big burden on the landlords as well. And I'm really concerned about that. If our existing inventory, if we can maybe identify certain areas where this kind of progressive idea would be more successful than other parts of the downtown district. I mean, to the point where maybe we only do a block. And I think one of the other things that Jeremy had said is there anything that we can do to kind of offset? If we do something like this, maybe an idea to offset the burden of the landlords is to do something like waive fees if you do need a variance in this district for this period of time. There's things we can do on a municipal level that might support or balance the concerns of a homeowner as well. So yeah, I worked hard on, I'm very proud of the fact that I worked hard on those, all the master plans we did from 2000, 2005, 2014, 2015, and 2022. But implementing it is different than an aspirational goal that you announce in a master plan. A master plan is a announcement. This is, my ideal. So sometimes the ideal isn't necessarily perfectly implemented, and we need to take that into consideration when we move forward.
I think that's one of the main reasons why Beth asked to have Pat Rinaldi talk to us. And he did most of the talking, going over how this would be implemented. And it was exactly the kind of discussion that Beth raised, and the distinction between interior design and interior decorator. And so that the interpretation by Pat would fit the vision. And
well, like I said, you had called out, you had pointed out that I had voted for the 2 last master plans. So I wanted to defend my position.
why you voted for it, if you are saying now that you are not in favor of doing retail.
But I didn't say that. I just said that we need to be careful of how we have the details of how we implement it. So there's a big difference.
But it's not, and just for clarification, there are a lot of office buildings outside of this area. Again, the Grom building, the Denai building, the Deeds building, Victorian Plaza, Rose Lawn.
I completely agree with
the egg auction. There are a ton of office buildings in town. And, of course, people want to be right in the hub of Main Street because, for whatever reason, but at 5 o'clock, those buildings go dark.
And they're beautiful buildings.
Right, but at 5 o'clock, they're dark. The lawyers go home, they roll up their carpet.
Actually, in 2000, I was going for my master's in planning, and one of my first assignments was to come to my hometown and read the master plan. And our master plan in 2000 said, we need more offices. That's what believe it or not. And it was kind of, I chuckle when I think about it. Because, and that was around the time that the county picked up and moved half of their offices over to Route 12. So, I get it. I have a concern of how we're defining office. Every town has a real estate office on, forward facing on their main street. The county passport, office is a governmental office that does services that, people go in and out. And so I'm hesitant. I think if we implement something like this, we almost have to be as detailed as we were with the SIC codes, in that we need to show exceptions to the rule, not using SIC codes, but I think we do need, and you started that, I can see that in your presentation, you have exceptions to the rules, and I think those are the things, those minute details are really important if we do go forward with this. So I'm not saying that I wouldn't vote for it, I'm not saying it's not a good idea, I'm not saying that I was one of the people that said, hey, first floor office isn't the best for a for your master plan, so let's encourage active uses. But that doesn't mean that this is perfect, it's not, we've got lots of work to do. One of the other little details I'm referring to is when we had redone the area by T-Berry, so the VAS district area, we had talked about artesian live-work units in those areas. I find it interesting that we're actually trying to flip it here in, a couple blocks away. So I think that might be something we want to think about seriously, whether that's something we want or not. I was a little confused on that, and I'm sure maybe I'm misinterpreting the intent of
Like
that.
whether or not we want to incorporate live work units?
Yeah, I was a little confused, and and like I said, the slide went fast, so I wasn't sure where it was, DB2 or what was the intention with the live work units?
So we're not specifically permitting live work in the DB or the DB2 district,
Mhm.
but I think as a practical matter, live work would be permitted. Meaning that you're allowed to have apartments or housing units on the upper stories with a commercial use on the first floor. So that inherently would permit a live work situation where somebody might have their shop or whatever the case may be on the first floor and have their apartment above.
But that work part of the live work unit couldn't be our artisan manufacturing.
No, not on the first floor.
Okay. That's where I was coming from, in both the DB and the DB2 district, is that's what?
Yeah, for artisan manufacturing, art studio, that would be permitted, but the art manufacturing, which is not active use, that's really somebody going in to their shop to make their art, doors closed,
Okay,
and then.
maybe I'm misinterpreting the word manufacturing
Yeah.
versus
Yeah, think of it as,
artesian
yeah,
store.
a studio, if somebody's there, they're painting, but they're selling their products as well, they might also be doing classes and activities,
Mhm.
that's also permitted, but predominantly. They're selling their work, they're also creating the work in the space, but it's got like a forward facing, Main Street facing economic focus in the sense that there's sale activities, there might also be other activities that are permitted in the building. For manufacturing use, it is simply a workspace for an artist.
Okay.
It does not have studio and sales associated with it.
And is it your intention to define some of these, that nuance that I just described, that I misunderstood in the quick presentation?
So we have definitions right now for art studios and art manufacturing, artisan studio and artisan manufacturing.
And the only reason that Beth did not provide this to the governing body is because she met with FCP last night, Pat Rinaldi today,
Mhm.
and then the council tonight, so she didn't have time to.
That's fine, I'm not,
So she's gonna, as soon as.
I'm not criticizing, I just wanna understand the
You
detail.
asked if you were gonna get it, and that's the reason you haven't gotten it.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Is because of those things. I just wanna also share an ironic story. The owner of Printech, which is now available for rent. The second floor has 2 apartments and the third floor has 1 apartment. The second floor also has a large space, which for 75 years was my grandfather's tailor shop. And for the last 20 years has been Printech's conference room. And he decided he wanted to make it into an apartment and it is not an accepted use. So it's zoned commercial up there and he was denied a permit to turn it into an apartment. And he called me and he said, it's $5,000 for me to bring an attorney into the planning board, what do I do? I said, you wait a month and see if this ordinance passes, because then the apartment will be an accepted use, so it doesn't necessarily have detrimental effects for people. I did talk to him about the first floor, he was nonplussed by, the idea that he could do an office in the back and retail in the front or a service in the front. He was fine with that. He was more concerned about the fact that he can't put an apartment on the second floor because it has always been a commercial use,
I'm sorry,
which is weird.
I don't
I
understand.
got one last one.
Oh, that's okay.
Between,
Yeah,
right, we were talking about how DB1, DB2, different, they got a different feel. Between Kepner Street and like Main Street or maybe Williams, right? We've got a lot of those businesses that have the, you know, large open windows, frontage right there on the sidewalk, and then below there, south of that, we have kind of the houses that have kind of been converted into restaurants and shops over the years, and they're kind of set farther back away. I hate to even propose the idea, but if we considered DB3, another downtown business district. Because I mean, honestly, I'd be interested to see how this worked for maybe a smaller section of it, like, you know, between Main Street and Kaffner Street. And saying, you know, those shops are all just this kind of retail. It's a thought or consideration to make your job harder.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman Nail, are you finished?
I was finished, but
Okay.
I really wanted to let Liz go before then.
Council Vice President Rossetti.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to kind of make sure I'm understanding correctly that there are exceptions to all businesses who are currently there, right? They're not having to leave. Is that correct?
That's correct. I wouldn't say it's an exception, but that's how the law would be applied to them. If you're.
So they're permitted.
That would be prohibited, you are not gonna be required to leave.
It's an existing non-conforming.
Correct, existing non-conforming use.
And then if they were to leave, another business could still come in. Is that correct as well?
Yes, it has to be the same business. So that's why, so an example I used earlier would be, an existing lawyer vacates a space, it could be reoccupied by another legal use. It could, law use, rather. It could not be, for example, be occupied by a doctor's office. That might be, you know, office very generally, but specifically that's going from a lawyer's office to a medical office, and those are two separate uses.
Okay, and then and I'm kind of putting you on the spot. You might not have this right now, but do we know how many offices we currently have in the district compared to like a percentage wise, a rough estimate?
I don't have that level of detail. One of the things that we did with the subcommittee was we looked at the uses within the various buildings along Main Street. But it was more of a general review as to whether or not it was a fully office building versus, say, a mixed commercial building that might be a mix of professional offices, services, and sales. Or if it's just simply a retail building as
Beth, can I
well.
interrupt you for a second? Liz, were you asking specifically about law offices just on Main Street or throughout the borough?
In the DB1 district, like how many offices are currently offices? Not necessarily law though, but if you have anything, let me know.
We had 19 as of my last count throughout the borough entirely. I
Right.
don't know about just Main Street,
I'm sorry, was that
Okay.
law or just office?
just law.
Okay.
Just law, and then there might be some other offices. I know there's like a doctor's office, right, somewhere, a dermatologist or dentist or things like that, orthodontist, right? So I guess where I'm kind of processing is that, as someone else pointed out, it's very expensive to change a use of a building, right? So in theory, it's kind of somewhat likely that if a law office was going to leave, maybe another one would come in, or if an orthodontist leaves, right, another dental office might come in. So that's all. I'm not really trying to, you know, convince anything to anyone, but just that, you know, we do have a lot of offices already, so that's something to consider, that they may still remain offices even though we're changing the permitted use going forward.
Can you educate all of us on the certification of nonconformity, that they're all entitled to that?
Yes, so let's say the ordinance is passed, generally as discussed, where offices are not permitted on the first floor. Minus the conditional use. And so what that means is they are non-conforming uses. And what the municipal land use law allows for, and what I would recommend, is for tenants or property owners with those existing uses that are now prohibited, they're non-conforming uses, they can apply to the zoning office within 1 year of the ordinance change to request a certificate of non-conforming use. And that essentially is a zoning officer certification that the lawyer's office existed in that building as of that time. And what that does is it confers specific rights as a non-conforming use, meaning that it's essentially the zoning officer certifying that the use was created legally based upon ordinances in place at that time, but by virtue of a change in zoning, the use is now non-conforming, but existing. And that's important because it means that if that if that office use in this example seeks to expand their building, it puts them in a different category of use variance, and importantly, puts them in a category that it is easier to obtain the use variance. So it's a very advantageous position for those property owners to be in. They have 1 year to get that certification from the zoning officer. But if they don't get it within 1 year, it just means they simply need to go to the zoning board, your planning board, using its zoning board powers to essentially issue the same certification if it finds appropriate.
So how do we communicate that to them?
I-
That's the bigger thing, right?
I would say it's simply, in whatever form of outreach the borough finds most successful, you might want to partner with organizations that have regular communication with business owners such as the FCK.
So that's an FCP function to do that, to reach out. Well,
I-
it would help. Well, let me put it this way, because the FCP is over that. So FCP, so we're handing that over to FCP to communicate that as well as pushing it onto our website. As well as, I'm just, my concern is that you're making, if this is passing. How is that communicated so everybody's on the same page and gets the same message? So and a year later comes through and someone says, I don't know anything about this, I've never heard this or whatever, because nobody's ever reached out. That's my
Is
concern.
that something that you could write for the, like, write a letter to the business owners on behalf of the borough in plain language, in plain English, that we could walk down Main Street, Tony and I, hand in hand, and hand out to all the businesses and say, give this to your owner, give this to your landlord, give this to whoever you want, and that way, at least
Well,
we
I think
know.
it's a two-step. I think I'm not gonna depend on them to give it to the landlord.
You
I
want
think
to
we need
mail
to
it?
know the landlord's name
We have that.
and information, and we need to send that to the landlord. And let the landlord know that, because the business owner is, I mean, they have no skin in the game, to be perfectly
We
honest.
have that in the tax records, we can certainly do a mailing, direct mailing to them.
I think that type of outreach and communication to folks is a great idea. Exactly how that gets done should be tailored to what works best here in the borough, but
But it's something
Frankly,
you could write for us.
yeah, and I would
in plain
recommend-
English.
yeah, I think that language should come from somebody in the
And I
borough,
think it needs
just
to be more
because
than
we
just one
understand.
letter, it needs to be a follow-up,
Mhm.
just to, again. I get a letter, I put it on the side and say, yes, okay, and just, but as a follow-up,
Mhm.
just to make sure that we're covered. They're covered, and we're all walking in, one road, one direction, so, yeah. Okay,
Yeah, I think that's great.
thanks.
So what's the next step?
I think the next step is for me to take the input that I've gotten recently from the FCP, the zoning officer, the subcommittee, and the council, revise some of the ordinances, work with our subcommittee to get them to a point where, planning board subcommittee is happy, and then pass them on to the council. If the council is inclined to introduce, you could do so as early as your next meeting.
Okay, the planning board, when they reviewed this, they were content enough to say that
Correct.
they did not need to see it again.
Yeah, that's correct. They reviewed it, they provided their commentary, but they did not ask for a revised version to be sent back to them. So as part of any adoption process, it'll be introduced by the council. It will then go back to the planning board for master plan review. So they will have an opportunity to review the ordinance once again, to review it specifically, to determine if it's consistent or not with the master plan. But it's also an opportunity for them to make comments if they see fit. And then, of course, it comes back here for public hearing.
Sharon, do you have any comments you want to share the planning board?
Yeah, just one point that kept coming out was about the inventory concerns about what we have and what can possibly be done with them.
Sorry.
Did I say it wrong? And that was discussed. That was discussed that the FCP are committed to, they don't have a full inventory right now, but it came from them that they were considering pulling together an inventory and almost identifying which buildings to Trent's point are easiest to convert and which aren't, and which can have some focal point for the easier transition, work with the landlords on that.
Yep.
And that there's also opportunities for grants, there's also the opportunity for the
Our abatement program, which we need
the
to put in
abatement
plain
program that they
English.
could, if they're spending money on the property, they can
Right.
get an abatement, we need to get that as part of the outreach. We've also offered to the FCP that if they have a meeting of landlords and tenants, Beth and I will totally come along and explain if there's any questions that they have in terms of outreach to make sure that everybody's aware of how this may move forward in the easiest way for everybody. So
And I
we-
don't think it should be if they have, I think it should be.
Oh, I hope they do it
have to
right, yeah,
have, right? I mean,
absolutely.
I think this is just so big and such a change that we have to, I'm all about over communicating. This has to be over communicated, but everybody has skin in the game, whether it's the planning board or subcommittee or Beth or council or everybody has skin in the game, so everybody has to play a role. And everybody has to take the lead on the role. So I do agree that FCP, it's not should you do it, it's you need to do it and you need to give us a date that you're gonna do.
Right.
Okay.
But we're totally open to supporting whatever they wanna do on that, and vice versa, we've been absorbing everything that everybody's been saying.
Karen, was there any discussion in the subcommittee about? We've all discussed before about how Lambertville is different than downtown Flemington. Clinton is different than downtown Flemington. I'll use Clinton because it's a very small, dense, very close together example. We have a lot, and it's more than just two. Banish's office, we have the Chamber of Commerce, we've got the other where Safe Harbor was, where right next to Bread and Culture. Those are three on that side that are former mansions, they were former single family homes at one point. Was there any discussion about making exemptions to the no office on the first floor rule for those types of structures? Because unlike Clinton and unlike Lambertville, we actually have a lot of those examples along the DB district.
But are you talking about spot zoning, because we can't do that?
Well,
We can't-
exactly,
we
and
can't
that's
do that. So you
where
can't
I'm.
we can't do spot zoning, as Beth said, so we have to put general rules in, and things can come from
So then
various.
everybody has to get a variance if they, I'm just.
Well, but the idea
I'm
of
playing devil's
this,
advocate, right?
right, but the
I
idea of
recognize
this
that.
is as Beth, but to Beth's point, we're trying to cover 98% of the of the suggestion, of the possibilities.
Mhm.
And that we can't cover that last 2% unless we get too specific, which we're not allowed to
So
do.
it is
as
in the
you well
ordinance
know.
that if they wanna
they
make it
can
a single
come.
family home again, they can do that, right?
We
Yeah.
discussed that in the master plan at one point. I don't know if it's in the ordinance yet.
It's. You're in, it,
It
so.
was a
in-
long time ago.
So in the DB district, we permit existing single family homes. But I can't, I don't have a way to allow commercial uses in some buildings to go back to single family homes, but not others. So-
Did in the subcommittee, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's kind of leading. Did you guys consider an overlay for, again, within the DB zone? Just for the denser areas that maybe exclude, instead of changing the entire zone. In its entirety, perhaps choose an overlay where some of these rules would be most effective. Or perhaps that's the way we implement this in a smaller scale, where we're really focusing our density and focusing our efforts on a 1 or 2 block area with an overlay versus changing the entire zone. Did the subcommittee think about that at all? Because that would be legal, wouldn't it?
So we didn't talk about an overlay, but we talked about different versions to, I think, get to the same results. And with the question of essentially, do we want to see retail along? I'm referring to Main Street, but it's not literally all of Main Street. It's really from about roughly Church Street up to roughly Pennsylvania Avenue. And then beyond that, it's maybe the TR district or transitional residential or the TC district. But we asked the question amongst ourselves, do we want to have retail services, these active uses along all of the DB districts on Main Street? Or do we want to concentrate it towards the center of town, more or less? And the thought process was essentially, what is the vision? The vision is for walkable, active downtown district with retail, restaurants, and all the uses that are permitted throughout that entirety of the DB district. And so that's why you don't see distinctions with conditional uses or overlays in that district, with the exception of the limited changes down there, like, for example, permitting single family homes on the northern and southern edges, so to speak, of the Main Street district.
So is the committee gonna meet again before you do your
Yes.
revision?
A day or two.
So maybe I just like, I'd ask maybe the committee, without boring everybody more to death. To consider perhaps the idea of, you know, really drum down to, okay, where are the properties that are the most, you know, in need? What's the inventory that's been empty the longest? And, you know, the two that I can think of are right across the street from the Union Hotel and right next to the Union Hotel, right? Those, so, and they just happen to be that in the block that's the most dense, that's as much similar to Clinton as you could get with those two blocks. I'm just saying, maybe look at it from a different perspective, and maybe that might help some of the outlying concerns. Just an idea. Suggestion. Yeah.
I'd be much more open to this if it was like a much more limited experiment, kind of similar to what Susan's saying, like, you know. Like I said, between Kapner, mine, somewhere around there, surrounding Union Hotel redevelopment project. This kind of zoning, yeah, it might make sense, it probably work. For the whole strip though, it's a lot, but that's all. Think about DB3, it could be huge, I don't know.
So, I'm gonna, Beth is so close to having this thing finished, she was just waiting for all this feedback. I am gonna ask her to finish this ordinance and meet with the committee again as planned. Get it tweaked, get it done, consider what the councilwoman asked for, see what the rest of the subcommittee says. Councilwoman Fasaro is on the subcommittee and is very supportive of this idea. And was putting it out there because she's homesick tonight. And I'm gonna suggest that Beth get it to the entire council for review, and that she prepare it for introduction on the 25th of November. And we'll see what happens. Okay?
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Beth, thank you so much, and I loved the statement that you made about, you know, what do you want this town to look like in 10, 15, 20 years, because it is really what this is, you know, planning is a long-term thing.
Yes,
And I really appreciate you putting that in all of our brains. So, have a good night.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Take care, everybody.
Do you have your thing?
All right, so
Huh? Oh, okay.
we're moving on to reports, my report. First of all, I just wanted to say congratulations to Brandon Elias, who's here in the audience for the election in November, early November. Welcome, and you're invited to stay through executive session if you have the time tonight. There's a, on behalf of the council, I should say that you're invited to stay. You're welcome to stay. Good night, thank you very much. So Bill's on, can you put about Bill in to talk? Carla. Bill.
Yes.
Hi, Bill.
Oh, unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself, Bill. Hi, Bill. Oh,
Hello, you hear me?
hello. So, you know, I wanted to just say thank you to Bill publicly. We got our new ratings from Standard & Poor's. It's been updated for the first time in a couple of years. And proudly, they've taken us off of the watch designation. They've recognized that this council is moving into a more fiscally sound, fiscally responsible set of policies, especially where it comes to debt, paying off debt and capital. Bill did a lot of hard work to do that report and meet with Standard & Poor's and get that rating for us. Do you want to add anything, Bill, before I continue to gush over you?
Yeah, I mean, they were very happy with what, what the progress we've made with paying down debt. That's one of the things that they really looked at, and building up our surplus at the same time. A lot of towns might pay down debt using their surplus, but we did both at the same time. So that's what, they were very happy with, and that's got us off the critical watch list, and said that we're stable.
Great, and I just want to, one of the things that the report said at least once, maybe twice, that we didn't have a debt policy, and in spite of that, they were doing this. And I was really upset with myself because I have written debt policies before and thought I had done one last year, and I didn't. So I wrote a debt policy, which is now in Bill's hands. Bill has reviewed it and wants to, he's making 1 or 2 significant tweaks. And then it'll be presented to the council on the 25th for approval. So we will have a debt policy, with your approval, the next rating round, and that should take us over the any concern of being put back on a critical watch list. Which, is not something any municipality wants to be on, because that's like one step away from being downgraded. So, you want to say anything, Bill?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, I mean, Bill is extraordinary. I think we're very blessed to have him as a CFO. And I really appreciate, the time you took to look at the debt policy statement that I wrote, and your input on it was really valuable, and I appreciated that as well. So, and I'll send it out, as soon as you send your tweaks, I'll send it out to the governing body.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So that is the really, really amazingly great news. It made my whole week when Bill shared that with me. So I have some not great news, however, at the same time, which is the police building. There's a lot of issues with this pit and pump system with our contractor. He is not moving quickly on this. He is not listening to our architect. Our architect is trying not to go over her contract amount, but she is being more of a GC than an architect at this point, and she's getting very frustrated. And I asked her flat out, what can we do about it? And she did not have a good answer. So, they're giving him, direction on what is supposed to go in and how deep it's supposed to be and how it's supposed to be constructed. And he's been pushing back on it. So I just wanted to report all that to all of you.
Why is he pushing back?
We don't know. Nobody knows,
Doesn't our front end define, and he is the GC
Yes,
legally.
yes.
And what does our front end say?
So our front end keeps fighting with him and repeating their orders on how to build the pit and pump. And he wants to put the pit in first. They want him to build the pump and build the pit around the pump. He wants to build the pump and put it in afterwards. They're telling him it's not gonna work. And it's just been, like I said, she's got limited funds as, provided by the council. And she is not the GC, and they've been, I'm bringing this to your attention. I have to have a conversation with our
They're
attorney.
not paying them, are they?
Are we paying him?
I mean, how do you pay somebody if they're not doing what you tell them to do?
Well, we paid him to date, but not for this work, because it's not done, but
There was no sequencing that identified in the construction documents?
well, remember, this pit and pump thing came later.
Okay, so there was no sequencing required in the
This.
change order,
I don't think so.
okay.
I know these are important details, but I think this is a legal
It
thing,
is a legal thing.
and I think that we need to.
So the other
make
thing
sure
I
it's done.
No,
think
I understand that. I'm not talking about the legal of it. I'm just saying. That's not, that saying, why aren't we paying them is not.
I
the
didn't
legal
say
issue.
we're not
No,
paying.
that's not what I said,
Oh.
Marcia. Listen to what I said. I said, why, I was asking a rhetorical question. I said, why are we paying them?
Oh.
So it was a rhetorical question, and that has nothing to do with legal. The point of it is, if someone's not doing their job, what are we doing to hold their feet to the fire? And you don't have to answer that, but the point of it is, are we holding their feet to the fire?
Angela is trying to hold their feet to the fire
but that's
without
her,
going
right?
over budget.
Right, But is she the person? that
No,
has
it's
to go
gotta
there?
go to Chris now.
Okay.
It's
It's the
gotta
first,
go
by the
to
way.
That's what I'm trying to
Mayor, you and
understand.
I spoke about many issues in the last couple of days, not this one though.
No.
So,
This one,
We-
this
you
one
got my-
is recent information.
you have my full attention for this, for discussion
Okay,
tomorrow on
this is
this.
very recent information.
I spoke about this
um,
project in the beginning, so.
So,
Yes.
so let me ask Chris,
Sure.
you as the council are, you're administering this contract, correct? Or who is administering this contract on behalf
Our
of? the-
CFO,
So
Okay, so Phil is administering this contract and, so I.
I can review remedies, I mean.
I don't want an
know
answer
this.
to I don't want an answer to this question. I'm just gonna pose this to you and you can get back to the.
None of rhetorical questions.
Yeah,
Hang on, me,
well,
guys.
because we shouldn't be, as, I guess, I would like to know about sequencing, meaning was that defined in the change order or the front end to begin with? And means and methods, in other words, does the contractor have the right to define those means and methods, meaning what order he does things? Or does the front end or the change order define that?
Sure.
So again, I'm not asking for a response, I don't
get it.
expect one, but that's the kind of question that I'd be asking maybe at the next meeting.
100%, or we can have a private discussion.
Yeah, that's fine.
that's fine. I also, when I was in this conversation with Angela, I did ask her to get us a proposal on what the cost will be to design the Sally Port. Because the Department of Corrections requires one, and of course, this is just another reason to never buy a police building. You gotta need the Department of Construction to look at it and tell you exactly what you gotta do. So we have no idea of what it's gonna cost, so she's supposed to be working on the cost estimate. For her fee to design the Sally Port, she is gonna call the Department of Corrections, the lieutenant who's been working with us. Find out what the minimum requirements they're gonna have are, because we certainly don't wanna build a Sally Palace. Only the Sally Port.
Speaking of that, where are they building the, isn't this supposed to be a bathroom on the first floor?
That's part of the contract with. That's part of the contract with the downstairs. That's all in the contract.
If Andrea.
So that hasn't been, that's not gonna, they can't do that until they do,
Oh, I don't know where it is, yeah. I don't
because
know.
they do need it.
Uh-huh.
If the architect, if we do approve the design to go forward, that, you know, for the architect to do the design. Does that define it as a shovel-ready project, ready for perhaps funding that kind of is offered to us unexpectedly when you do have an option, an opportunity for shovel-ready projects? You know, that's something that we discussed in the past where if we had a shovel-ready project, then this funding is available. If we have this design done, does that constitute a shovel-ready project?
You're way ahead of me, I just want to price and what she's
Okay.
gonna charge us to design it, that's all I want right now. We have no money for any of this, so, you know, and it's, if I have to choose between, I mean, we're being forced to put in the Sally Port by the Department of Corrections. If I could choose between sewer lines in Flemington that are 100 years old and a Sally Port, I'm picking the sewer lines. So, I don't, you're way ahead of me.
That's fine, I'm just saying, well, paying for the design and
Yeah.
having it ready to go for some invisible funding that we don't know about, you know, down the road.
Yeah,
Might
No,
be
I-
might be beneficial, because it costs a lot less to pay for the design up front and have it ready on the shelf,
yeah,
ready to
yeah,
pull off,
no, I hear you,
you
but
know.
we have to get this thing built at some point, you know, we can.
We know
delay
we
it
have
a
to do
little
it
bit,
eventually
so-
anyway, so we might as well have the design on the
Yeah.
shelf ready to pull out.
And the other thing I just wanted to share with the council is that we are very close to getting the final approvals on the entire Main Street from Church to the Circle, for the I-Bank funding for the lead and galvanized pipe replacement on the Borough side of the road. That was the last add-on, and the I-Bank has indicated that we are, our project has been accepted. It is not approved yet, but it's accepted. We meet regularly with them by Zoom calls, and our bond counsel Megan Bennett, who has done an amazing job getting the delays, you know, everything has been, you know, we had the road money 3 years ago and it was never used, and then we held up that project to get the sewer money, and then held up that project because of EPA and the galvanized lead pipes. And you know, Megan is an extraordinary bond counsel. she's got, I don't know, 50-something municipalities she's bond counsel for, and she has an amazing relationship with the IBank. So, you know, on the phone, the last conference call, she did get them to verbally tell us that they will be forgiving most likely 100% of the sewer line replacement and 100% of the galvanized pipe replacement. But they cannot put that in writing until closing, which is in January. So that's about at least $1.5 million of forgiveness. And at the very least, we'll get 80% forgiveness, but it looks like we're gonna get the 100% on both of those, and leaving us with the debt of about $1.2 million on the road part of this, which includes replacing the traffic light at church. The next, and I do have an update from the DPW, I just have not gotten a chance to type it up for their project priority list. But their next priority project is Main Street from Church to Chorister Place. None of that has been funded. Again, we will qualify for 100% on sewer and 100% on galvanized lines, not the road. We will get some kind of forgiveness, a minimum of 25% on the road through Megan. But those water lines have to be replaced. So unlike the top part of Main Street, where the water lines were done in like 1991, these water lines were not done. We should qualify for 100% on that too. So the game plan is to, you know, do these projects. We have to bond for the full amount, get it done. Bill has to get all those bills certified and into the IBank. They will do that forgiveness. Start basically the mortgage payment on the part that's not forgiven, which is the road. And we'll be able to then turn, that bond debt will disappear for the rest of the lines and the water lines, sewer lines, whatever, and then we can flip it on. So we're delaying now also Mine Street. We got that award from the DOT last year to do a portion of Mine Street. Those sewer lines are also 100 years old. And Josh is checking out to see, he believes that some portion of Mine Street had water lines done maybe 10 or 15 years ago, but not the whole road. So those water lines and the galvanized pipelines have to be done as well. So this is gonna be this continuous, you know, doing this work, getting the bond debt forgiven, and then moving on to the next cycle where, you know, we'll be accumulating some road debt and hopefully paying it down in large chunks. You know, we've got money coming in from Liberty Village, and that can also be used towards this. We have a well to build. I mean, there's, you know, there's things to do, but for me, and I hope you all agree, progress in this town is not just what's above the streets. Progress is also making sure that everybody has a safe infrastructure 15 feet below the ground. And that's real progress for this town, because this is something that has been kicked down the road by the council for over 30 years, and it's gotta get done. Especially when we have a funding method where we're getting so much of this money forgiven by the state of New Jersey. So, you know, we can get at least $6 million forgiven from 3 different pots, and after that, it's at least 80% forgiven, up to $10 million from each pot. So the money is there. We just have to make sure that we continue paying down debt responsibly, bonding responsibly, not taking it for granted that things are great in Flemington, where we can, you know, start looking at other things that the wish list of goodies that we all wish we could pay for and buy, you know, bands on Main Street or whatever. We've got to stay vigilant to get this stuff done and get this town, like, you know, Beth, you know, what's the vision 10 years from now or 20 years from now? For me, it's certainly not people having sewer backups like they did this past month. There was 3 of them in this town that were pretty bad. So, okay, so that's my report. Council President?
Sure. again, congratulations to Councilman Park on his reelection and Councilman-elect Arias on his election. Looking forward to January, with Jens.
Tony, I'm sorry, congratulations on your reelection.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, so fire department, the cab for the new aerial fire truck is currently being assembled. Deputy Fire Chief Rob Skank will be getting weekly updates from the manufacturer. And I can certainly share that with the council. I've got some nifty pictures.
Do you know when we're taking delivery? Because that's when we have to start paying for it.
I don't have that date as of.
Do you know what year? Is it gonna be this year or next year?
Yeah,
Is it just the cab?
that's it.
What?
I would say next year.
Next year? Bill wants it to be next year. I want it to be next year.
If they're just doing the cab.
Okay, we'll hope.
Rescue squad, I have a lot of numbers for you, but I'm just gonna say that, the comparison numbers from October 2023 and October 2024, went up. Just so you know, the, calls for October, 329 emergency calls. And again, remember, this is a shared service, with Brandon Township, Bennington, they'll help out, Delaware Township, East Amwell, they help. Actually, 10 calls out there, so Lambertville, Stockton, and then out of county. But Farmington Borough, we had 75 calls. And again, squad head wanted everybody to know that October was the busiest month on record. With 10 calls answered per day. So I don't know what was going on in August, but they had a lot of calls regarding, vehicle responses. There were 370 of those. Made contact with 288 patients. 227 of the patients were transported to medical facilities by squad ambulances. Again, the hours on the road have been going up. Squad participation, various fire prevention nights across the region. Trunk or treat at Robert Hunter and Raritan Township. Squad participated, of course, in the trick or treat activities in the borough of Flemington. Multiple drills have been completed. Squad members, EMTs are keeping up to date. 7 rescue squad members were deployed by FEMA with New Jersey Urban Search and Rescue Task Force 1 to North Carolina, in response to Hurricanes Helene and Milton. And the rescue squad is always looking for new members to assist them with protecting the community. You can go to www.frfars, say that fast, .org/join for more information. And the last thing I got a last minute update. You may have heard the fire whistle go off earlier. Well, let me remind you, we are in stage 3 fire restriction, okay? So avoid open flames outside.
Oh my God.
Just saying, just saying.
So somebody was it an open burn?
Yeah, yeah. So stick to the propane contained devices. We still are in a drought situation.
They just turned talking about putting us under a complete warning, which on the drought, which also will include water restrictions, including on our well system and private wells. So stay tuned. Start doing the rain dance.
Yeah, we need it there.
We really need it. Thank you. Council Vice President Rossetti.
Thanks, Mayor. Not much tonight. There is a shade tree meeting tomorrow evening, and I'll report back to you next council meeting on that.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Engelhardt.
Thank you. Sam Fleming House, there's an open house December 14th. Our monthly open house, so please consider coming out and stopping by and saying hello. If you've never toured the building, it's really an interesting building to tour. I want to thank the police and especially the K-9 unit for coming out. We had about a dozen people attend that event a couple weeks ago, the first weekend in November. School reports. Let's see, FRSD, the Flemington Raritan School District Board of Education meeting is this Thursday, November 14th at 7 p.m. JP Case, it's this Thursday, November 14th. And the high school next Board of Ed meeting is 7 p.m. on November 25th. That's 7 p.m. at the IMC building. And then finally, for the high school, there is the 11-12 play, November 22nd and 23rd. I'm sorry, the 11th and 12th grade play. I
Oh,
didn't actually say the name
okay.
yet. The 11/12 play. And they do 2 plays every year, the freshman, sophomore,
Right.
junior, seniors.
Got it. Okay.
The 11/12 play is based on the book Aunt Mame, Aunt Mame. Tickets are $8 and on sale at the school's website.
When is it?
November 22nd and 23rd.
And is name?
It's May, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, Auntie Mame.
Yeah.
Auntie Mame.
It's 7 PM on the 22nd, which I think is Friday, 2 PM and 7 PM on the 23rd. I do want to thank you, Councilman Long, for mentioning the burn again. My hometown is under 5,000 acres of
You're from Oakland, so-
yeah, I'm West Mumford. And there's 5,000 acres burning right now, and there's literally ash falling on my sister's home, and it's all our friends and family are very scared up there, so please
Yeah.
keep diligent, it's really important, so thank you for mentioning that. And we lost a fireman up there as well, this
Yeah.
Oh, no.
very, very young fireman.
Yeah.
or-
No,
with the
New
range.
York side.
On the New York side, yes,
Very
Forest.
And Councilman Levitt.
Not much to report this evening. Let's see, last week we had the historic walking tour on Main Street. We had some good turnout, got to learn about a lot of cool buildings on there. And next HPC meeting is next Wednesday at 7 PM. That's everything.
Thank you, Councilman Perkins.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I will report on, there's some things with the police health, but I need to make sure that I can say those things with them, but. I will say this, Liz on Park Avenue, they did do this whole traffic study. This is what's really interesting about the number of people coming through this town, and it may be the same cars, but. They did a traffic study of 45,592 vehicles. So
What period of time?
over a 21-day period. And
Holy cow.
but this is my point, people will stop here if there's something to stop to, right? Because that just goes to show you how many people, and that's just on one street. But interesting, this is for Liz, is that the maximum speed, the average speed was about 31 miles per hour. The maximum speed was 51 miles an hour. They did violations above 35 miles an hour. They issued 878 violations.
In 21 days?
They
Seriously?
said, I don't know if they issued violations. They said violations above 35 miles an hour. I need to find out how many violations, how many of those were. Well, no, how many of those were actual tickets and how many of those were warnings? That's the question. That's the question, but it goes to Liz's point, because Liz actually was talking about how Park Avenue was a speeding zone, and it kind of goes to the point that, and they're still being diligent on that. They also did studies online. And on New York Avenue, and what they're doing is they're going around the town, around the borough, and they're just doing it at strategic places to figure out where the speeding is really, where they're having a problem. But going to your point, Liz, I just wanted to let you know that.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate that. I'm glad they're following up on all that. That's great.
And the other thing is, again, the police, they're doing a lot of community outreach, They're doing ice cream socials, they've been at Shaker Cafe. They're putting together a target list of communities to go into around town. I mean, I'm just so happy, because this was one of the things that I ran on 2 years ago, and it's all come to fruition, and I'm very grateful. Speaking of running, I am very honored to be able to serve again for another 3 years. I'm appreciative of all the support and all the outreach and the follow-up. I can't tell you how many people have texted me, emailed me, and saying, thank you, we're really happy to have you back, and so I am honored that you honor me, so thank you. And Brandon.
Do you wanna announce the swearing in for the new officer?
Yes, why don't you do that? Since you put me on the spot.
You want me to
Yes,
do it?
no, it's no. So our new officer is starting, will be sworn in on December 2nd.
I think
At one.
At 1:00 PM here in Borough Hall. Again, I'm really happy this guy's coming on board. When you meet him, you will instantly like him. He's just one of those people that you just like right off the bat. He's just very sincere.
I like Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's an old timer.
Yes.
He's a was.
He's a legacy.
He's a was cuz, I mean, this is new.
No, he's a legacy.
years ago to upgrade?
Yeah, that's what you gotta do, dude. You gotta work with
Wait,
it.
hold on. And I forgot to tell Trent, the rabies clinic was a big success.
Oh, you didn't tell that? No,
70
that's why he didn't do a report
Yeah,
on it.
70 people.
Oh.
That was the highest.
And we only had what, 75 to give out, right?
No, we had 108 shots.
Okay.
So we had 38 shots.
More than
Don't
that.
we-
Yeah,
I
no, that's what
thought-
I thought
She
you
said
said.
75 doses.
That's what you said.
No, I counted it afterwards and that.
Okay,
That's generally good.
That's good, so we get more than we.
Yeah.
That's great.
great.
We're great.
All right, we're gonna go into public comment session number 1. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anybody from the public, just come up to the microphone. Robin, I am holding you to 3.
Yeah, I know those
Okay.
gentlemen want to talk.
Well, I normally say it and I don't hold you to it, but I am. because it's really-
questions and a
I'm not letting it. It's a
Okay.
comment period, no questions.
All right, I'll be making some comments for the next 3 minutes. Robin Lapidus, thank you. All right, so, we're about to turn to Christmas and all the other wonderful holidays in a big way, so you'll start to see wreaths and, beautiful lights and things. We are helping the Boy Scouts, with they have a new tree this year, which also required some new lights, but we also feel that it's a really important tradition. It's 102-year tree lighting, and it really adds a lot to our business area. I just wanted to say that I'm really proud that we're having these conversations. I think they've been really generative and interesting and will lead to very important outcomes, but it is that we're all talking to each other. And I think that the antidote to wishful zoning, and I love that phrase, is incentives around development and economic development and growth. And one of those incentives is rewarding investment in your town, whether it's a resident or it's a property owner. It's a big investment to buy buildings in this town, to keep buildings in this town, to maintain buildings in this town. And I completely agree with you that the pipes and the under layers are just as important as what goes on a first floor or second floor. I do hope that we can have more conversations about cultural spaces and community spaces, because I know we keep talking about retail, but what's happening in retail today is that these are spaces not just to buy a thing, which is what Beth said. It's really to feel like you're a part of a community. It's to have a conversation with somebody who says, you know, how's your day? How are you? I mean, and we do have some work to do here. Most of those buildings that you mentioned 4 or 5 times in that same group of buildings, they need so much work and so much financial investment just to have the elevator go up and down in Victorian Plaza. It doesn't currently work. You know, the stairwell is blown out. That for that building, and we should all demand and
Your time is almost over.
what?
Your time is almost
Oh.
over.
Okay, well, we should all be sure that we are imploring the owners of buildings to maintain them and keep them up so that we can put meaningful things in them. But I also think we should think about incenting people to do outdoor dining. We should incent people to make spaces that are good for the community, not just retail. Because it's really a bigger picture. And to that end, I do wonder about museum as a use, like, since it wasn't mentioned, is that something
What?
that museum? Like, is the Historical Society going to have to become a toy
No,
shop
they're an active fund use.
as kind as not retail? Service? I don't know that that's I don't know that we have, I don't know that I hope that we cover all of the.
I'll ask, when we have this subcommittee
Okay.
meeting, whenever that is.
I hope that we cover all of the cultural and event and community uses that we want that are as important and balance out retail. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else from the public? You know you're on the agenda, right?
Yes, that's why we're here.
Okay, state your name for the record, please.
I'm Michael Skarczyk. I'm the president of CE and CEO of CEA. Also race director for the 32nd Turkey Trot.
Do you need to spell this?
Of course.
SKOCZ, or for some people, EK. I'm also here to proudly announce that not only are we doing 32 years of the Turkey Trot, and thank the mayor, current and past, and council, current and past, for the support, and obviously, hopefully for the future too. But I'll also be out of town when the next meeting after the Thanksgiving event takes place. To introduce you to my associate, Kyle Doremus. He joined our staff not that long ago, and no doubt he'll be able to give a report after the event while I'm enjoying a beer and wine tasting in Belgium. So more to the point, I understand the consent agenda is involves the street closures or what have you. We're here to answer any questions you may have, either now or during the discussion.
When we get to the resolution. Thank you so much.
Kyle, can you spell your name or last name?
DOREMUS.
Welcome aboard, Kyle. Anybody else from the public? Seeing none. Get on to the main part of the agenda. Approval of minutes of regular session, October 15, 2024. Can I have a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Nobody second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Executive session, October 15, 2024. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Nobody second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Hi, Lynn. Regular session, October 28, 2024. Regular session minutes. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Wait, hold on. Were you here?
Nothing, yeah.
You were not, were you here?
No, you weren't here at the last meeting.
Oh, yeah. No, was that at the last?
You were out.
No, because Liz, read your report.
That was the 28th.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
I rescind my.
Yes.
You can move
Alright.
it, there's no law, but
Yeah.
typically, you know.
Motion made by Councilman Levitt. Is there a second?
Parker second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Any extensions?
Abstain.
Executive session, October 28, 2024. Can I have a motion, please?
Nobody move.
There a second?
Parker second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Any extensions?
Abstention.
Consent agenda resolution 2024-153, resolution authorizing Turkey Trot street closures, November 28, 2024. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Nobody second.
Are you keeping the same route you did last year?
Exactly the same.
Exactly, thank you.
Yeah.
I thought the last year's route was shy of the 5K.
That was the year before, when there was a problem on Broad Street where the whole list, we had to jiggle around it. Last year, we backed up the start and pulled the
You're
finish
right.
forward a bit.
I apologize,
That's quite all right.
I was out of town last year,
I
so I'm.
paced it 3
I'm-
times, so I
I'm
remember.
mushing the two together, thank you.
All right, can I have a roll call,
Yes,
please?
Councilwoman Engelhardt,
Yes.
Councilman Levitt,
Yes.
Council President Long,
Yes.
Councilman Parker,
Yes.
Council Vice President Rosati.
Yes.
We don't have any ordinance to introduce, we don't have any public hearings. Item 13 on the agenda, regular agenda, resolution 2024-154, resolution authorizing the Borough of Flemington to accept a sub-grant award of the federal fiscal year 2024 of Emergency Management Performance Grant and Emergency Management Agency Assistance. This is at the request of Sergeant
McNally.
McNally. I was struggling
You were
with
gonna
calling
say
him a corporal.
corporal.
Yes, you called me and it threw me off. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Nobody second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Engelhardt?
Yes.
Councilman Levitt?
Yes.
Council President Long?
Yes.
Councilman Parker?
Yes.
And Council Vice President Rosetti?
Yes.
Resolution 2024-155, resolution of the Borough of Flemington, County of Hunterdon, State of New Jersey, authorizing the Borough of Flemington to submit an application to the New Jersey Water Bank for Main Street lead service line replacement improvements. This is for the portion from the Circle to Church Street as part of the road restoration project up there. Can I have a motion, please?
Long move.
Is there a second?
Levitt will second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Engelhardt?
Yes.
Councilman Levitt?
Yes.
Council President Long?
Yes.
Councilman Parker?
Yes.
And Council Vice President Rosetti?
Yes.
We're up to public comment session number 2. Robin, you get another 3 minutes.
I just forgot to say one thing.
That's okay.
Which is, thank you, that we have, we plan to bring designs, if we can get on your agenda for the next meeting, for some signage.
Okay, we can put, you want it as a presentation?
Sure.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Just as a reminder to everybody on the council and the public, we do have an early start time at the next meeting at 6 o'clock for a presentation by Tony Dill, who is doing consulting work for us through the DEP as a grant. He works for the DEP. They gifted him to us to do to review our stormwater issues. You know, there's laws that have come down on high from the federal government through the states regarding stormwater and impervious coverage and stormwater repairs. And basically, I mean, the bottom line is they are imposing another tax on all of us. And, you know, there's ways, I mean, roadbane, another name is a tax. But there are ways to make it a little bit more palatable, though it's never palatable. We don't have any choice about this. This is state and federally mandated across the entire country. We have a 6 o'clock start time for anybody who wants to be here. It's going to be shown on Zoom as well. We'll put it up on YouTube afterwards, so people understand exactly what's coming and when. He's also been working with Raritan Township. Raritan Township did a presentation like this a few months ago. And FCP hosted one for business community a few weeks ago. So this one is for everybody else. But then the regular meeting starts at 7, Robin, as normal, okay? We don't have any bills tonight, and we do have an executive session, negotiations, Cardinal Captiva, Courthouse Square, public safety, litigation, cannabis license, and personnel. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
Long move.
Is there a second?
Engelhardt will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's take a 10-minute break and clear the room.
Recording.
Session, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Long move.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trent, are you going to the environmental commission meeting?